Never miss our updates and be part of our conversation squad.
First of all, congratulations. And I think by now you know that we are all rooting for you, I think is the phrase.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, but I think you have to hold the mic closer.
I have to hold it closer, quite right.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, thank you all. Yeah.
But I would like to say here that Oscar or no Oscar, it's lovely to be nominated. I hope very much that you will be there with the Oscar. But whatever, I think you are absolutely the best. You are just wonderful in every way. So, should I start?
Yes, honestly, first, thank you, because in India we make so many films, and my film was one amongst 29 other films that were being considered, at least half a dozen of which were excellent films. So the fact that I won, I mean, India's entry in itself, for me, is an award. It's really, I'm very humbled, and we will do our very best to make everyone proud.
So just taking up from there. I think we all have different, we all think about this film quite a lot, and you know, why was it so important? Why did everyone across the board respond to it? What was it that you think was so important about it?
You know, I've thought about this a little bit, because I suppose one of the things that appealed to people was the fact that it was, in its form and in the tone and pitch of the film, it was quite fresh. I don't think people were expecting something like this, which was light, which was a comedy, but it also had its, you know, sort of undercurrent of things that we wanted to talk about. And I think that really charmed people. And I feel the fact that we weren't so strident about anything that we wanted to say, I think really worked in our favor. And I think that's probably why a lot of people like the film.
I want to share something here. A young friend of mine saw this film in a hall, in a theatre in Bhopal, and in not one of the fancier places, you know, in one of the smaller theatres. And walking out, there was this family with fairly traditional, you know, not at all very modern or anything, a family. And the man was overheard by her to say कि अरे ऐसा film देख के ना मन बिल्कुल fresh हो जाता है. So what was it? So this is this thing, you know, this freshness. When I mentioned this to somebody, they said, yes, it was like a breath of fresh air, which is true, because we are, we are all the time hearing such a lot of bad news, difficult news, everything that comes to us. Here was a film that actually had very deep issues, but it was very lightly done. It was a very light touch. I just want to mention one thing, and let's move on from there. The whole film, the whole plot of the film is presaged on the fact of this confusion of identity because the women are veiled. And there are all kinds of meanings that come out of this one. Definitely the veiling. The problem, I'm so sorry. The problem of veiling, of course, and then there's that very funny thing where, you know, they're all veiled, ke photograph dikhate hain, and she has the... But it's also that there's something about the submerging of personality. So do you want to see, was that something that you wanted to think about?
Yes, in fact, that was one of the starting points, really, of the kind of conversations we wanted to raise in the film. Because it's a little bit like Shakespeare. The idea of swapping identities has a very old one, the device used to, sometimes the woman has to dress up as a man, like in 12th Night, and, you know. So the idea of identity and all the various struggles women have to be accepted the way they are, to overcome what society expects of them, to be given the agency to decide what they want to do with their lives was very much the sort of the issues that were underpinning the whole story. The idea of identity and agency. So, it was a great metaphor, that of the veil, the idea that women sort of have a daira or, sort of a limit that circumscribes their potential. And the journey film, which lets them discover their, what makes them happy, what makes them their best possible selves. So very much a question of exploring identity, and certainly we wanted to do it in a way where it wasn't just critiquing a gungat or a burqa or any kind of veil. That wasn't the idea, because the veil really was for us symbolic and a metaphor. And you'll see at the end of the film, you still have women wearing their burqa, their gungat, and honestly, as long as it's a question of choice, it doesn't really matter to any of us. But specifically, yeah, and women and everybody should have the choice to dress the way they like, cover their faces if they want. We were very clear about that. But when it comes to a question of, it was actually literally a physical metaphor to say that these women have been in some way denied the opportunity to be themselves. So yeah, we did want to explore identity a lot through this.
So what you're doing here is something highly complex, because you are taking the issue of veiling, which is more than just a physical veil. You're also talking about the freedom to dress as you wish. Veil, not veil, wear whatever you want. This is all part of it. It's part of the same continuum. And of course, as I think we are constantly reminded, you've done this with such a light touch. And that perhaps is something very, very refreshing. And I remember many, many years ago, the way people said, the women's movement has no sense of humor. So I think we have discovered that sense of humor, right? There were other things within this, everything was treated, there was humor, there was a lot of humor. Every time you dealt with an issue which could get very tricky, or where you might become polemical about it or sensitive, there was immediately a bit of a joke. And it was the kind of thing that we all see always around us.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was important to deal with it as such. I mean, rather than make because actually what we touched upon in the film is known to all of us. And most of us, men and women, have faced all kinds of, situations, issues, struggles, hurdles in our lives. Nothing that we showed was particularly, apart from the idea of the switch and a girl getting, sort of transported far away from where she's supposed to go. Other than that, it was very relatable and could have become quite grim, And when you touch on things that are in some way a mirror to society and the way we are, and the kind of assumptions we make, the way, for instance, a girl like Phool has been indoctrinated and told what the best way to be a young, respectable lady is. These are things that we all have experienced and we've seen. And I thought that, and actually the original script had all these things in it, but it was a much more realistic and art house, gentle film. It had a gentle humor, but it was not a comedy.
No.
And when I read it the first time, I realized there's so much scope in just our everyday lives for satire. There's so much space for humor. And when you have humor, it creates a space for conversation. Because if you're laughing together, if you're willing to laugh at yourself, it softens a part of you. It begins to soften the boundary between you and the other. and creates that space to explore what could be a very sensitive issue. So I knew I had to make it into a comedy, and I was very lucky in Sneha Desai, our writer, who has an incredible flair for comedic dialogue and plot twists. So yeah, so the idea, I don't think it would have worked if it wasn't. If people weren't actually, even though they felt bad for Deepak having lost his wife, etc., they were laughing. You know, when the Ghungat goes up and everyone's shocked because you're ahead of him in this
Yes.
screenplay a little bit. So, you know, we wanted that opportunity to be able to laugh at our problems as well, because they're of our own making sometimes.
You spoke about the screenwriter, the scriptwriter. Now I want to ask you here, you know, as a director and as a woman director, how, when you get a script, now this script was also written by a woman.
It was.
Yes. But what is it that the director is able to do with a script? Because there is a script, and as we know, it's created in performance. Yes, at the moment of performance, and I'm thinking more of play and so on now, theatre. But even in film, it is happening there and then, right? Yes. So as a director, how do you work with a script? I'm talking about both the scripts that you have done, both the films you've directed, but also what is your understanding of this? How do you? And how do you work with this as a woman specifically? And as a very intelligent and very, you know, aware woman.
So in this case, of course, a man wrote the original story, Biplab Goswami. It was called Two Brides at that point. And then we brought on Sneha, who is a theatre writer, also writes very big television shows. She's some of these very hit TV shows are written by Sneha. And she has a fine understanding of how relationships and families work. So when we sat together, actually, I had a few things that I was very sure I wanted to change in the original story, add a few things, like Manjumai didn't exist. So I really wanted that one character who could symbolize, you know, women's independence, a person being able to live on her own terms, by her own rules. And Sneha created a wonderful character from that brief. And then there was also the character of Jaya, who was quite different in the original screenplay. But Sneha also brought in other characters, like this mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law and this sister-in-law. You know, lots of other experiences or circumstances of women that you could, you know, you would have experienced sometime in your life, and use these relationships and characters to, you know, speak to some of these issues. So we had all of this fantastic writing. And she wrote some sparkling, very funny dialogue. For me, the real key and the challenge was that Sneha writes for effect, because she's a theatre writer. And she writes for that last bench. You know, you have to get what you're saying. So we actually, because the dialogue and all the writing was so powerful, my challenge was to make it very commonplace, natural and organic. And to make it very light. So that whatever, even if it was a line that you can remember much later, the actor, when they're saying it, is saying it without having ever thought they were going to create, you know, an earthquake with this line. You know, as we were talking about this, the mother-in-law saying something like, हमको तो अब यादें नहीं है कि हमको क्या पसंद है. You know, it could have been a very sort of maudlin, melodramatic moment where everybody stops and says, yes, women have to give up so much for their, you know, which I didn't really want. I wanted it to be all a little bit light of touch. So that was one of the challenges when I was shooting. And I was lucky to have a great cast of actors. And very trusting of me and what I was going for, knowing that I was going for a certain pitch of performance. So that was fun. But the key actually, Vidyapachi, is in the editing. Because we shot the whole film. But actually, if anyone's really interested in how the filmmaking process works, the first, of course, important thing is to have a great script. Then you get into shooting it, which has its own challenges, and it's almost in a sense an adaptation of what's on paper. You can never quite get the perfection that you perhaps sometimes have on paper, but it becomes its own beautiful entity. And then comes the third and most important stage of filmmaking, which is editing, because it gives you the chance to better both the script and what you shot. And that actually was the stage at which this film, I think, achieved, that lightness of touch. Because my editor, Jabin, excellent editor, wonderful collaborator to have, had a very sharp ear for anything that sounded at all patronizing, condescending, speechification. So all of that we went through with one of those very, very fine-tooth combs, and took out, even within one little monologue, would take out words, would take out lines, and that takes real skill as an editor. But I had a great time working with her, because we had the luxury of time, so we could arrive at exactly the right balance that we wanted.
Actually, this is so lovely what you've said, because I think what I'm hearing and what we're all hearing, and maybe we know it, but it's lovely to hear it again, is how much this is a collaborative work, You just cannot do it without each person at each point coming in, being absolutely together in the process, contributing to it. Yes, in that way, it's a highly democratic process, which is so wonderful.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily democratic, but it's one of those collaborations where if you, as a director, do not get the best out of your team, your product cannot be good. So you can be the best director on earth, and if you just cannot bear your DOP and don't like his suggestion, you're just never going to, collaboratively make a good piece of work. So it's one of those rare art forms which depends so heavily on collaboration and cooperation, and getting the best out of each other. I think that's actually your most important job as a director. So we think it's a job of vision, and you're always thinking you have great ideas, but more often than not, you're handling people's meltdowns, tantrums, and I'm not talking about just everyone assumes it's an actor. No, you have a DOP has a tantrum, or, your production designer refuses and cannot get you what you want in time, So you've seen the end credits of a film, and you know how many people actually work to getting that to the right place.
I want to talk also. I want to hear a little more about the earlier film that you made, Dhobi Ghat, which was very different in tone. And yet, I find that there are some threads which are similar. I can see that it is, there are ideas there which have been fleshed out here, which have come in a different way. So can you talk a little about that also? It was a more complex film that way, more difficult to, not everybody was so taken with it, but it was also a very, very interesting film. And it seemed to me that there were things which, I could say, oh, I can see that idea is, she's still pursuing it. Or, yeah, so can you talk a little about that?
I suppose, Dhobi Ghat, like you said, very different also because it was sort of personal. It was an exploration of the city through these lives of people. And I think I'm really interested in how human beings are. I'm deeply interested in the human experience and especially how we treat each other, And that, I suppose, informs a lot of my work. In Dhobi Ghat, you see it a lot in the sort of a city which is actually one of the more democratic, more, sort of free, liberal cities, but also deeply divided along class lines, because it's one of those things that exists across our country, where either you're one of the, and that too in so many different layers, class, caste, of course your opportunity that comes from where you come from. So yeah, those things interest me a lot, and I think that's a common thread, perhaps, between that and Laapataa Ladies. Laapataa Ladies, it was also, looking specifically at that through the lens of gender, through what happens to girls, and how they are denied their rightful opportunity, their rightful voice. So similar to, in that sense, to Munna in Dhobi Ghat, or even Yasmin, who only has access to a certain kind of experience because of where she's from and because of being a woman. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that in Laapataa Ladies, yes, dreams denied, but also they never give up on their dreams, whether it is to be reunited with the husband or whether it is to go to the agriculture college. I mean, they just don't lose faith. Yeah. They don't lose hope, and they don't sit waiting. That was also lovely कि वो करते रहते हैं, कुछ ना कुछ करते रहते हैं. Where they are in that situation, they create a world for themselves, which was also very beautiful. But Dhobi Ghat, again, Dhobi Ghat, you were dealing also with gender and class, yes? And there are 4 stories, and there is the story of there is the city, which is also a very big character, right? Can you tell me a little more about that? What was it that made you think of that particular set of characters?
Well, when I came to Bombay from Calcutta, what was really, really refreshing was this sense of, in fact, it was there in a line, I think, there's a sense of feeling of opportunity in this kind of salty air, a feeling of openness. And it's one of those islands where over actually millennia, all kinds of people have been, have come, have been welcomed, have found success in what they do, and have built the city ground up. And it's, it's a testament to the power of migration that humans have had over so long. So it's really, for me, that was very interesting, because I had just come to this city. I had the experience of meeting the munnas to the, shais within the city. When you're looking for place, and actually it was very close to my own experience of having to move from house to house, because in Bombay, the Rent Act doesn't let you stay longer than 11 months. So I was bouncing around a lot, meeting all kinds of people, and that feeling that, that house that you've gone into is still warm from someone else's presence, They've left behind a book or a couple of things that kind of give you a glimpse into their lives. And that really interested me, about this sort of unbroken chain of people who are building the city with their labor, and that interested me also because there is so much scope and opportunity for people to interact across class lines, because we are not a city unlike Delhi where there are big walls between us. You next to your fancy building, there will be a chawl or absolutely. A slum or a giant dustbin or a massive construction, and it's pretty much the same, regardless of who you are. So there is a sense of sort of
leveling.
Evening out, like in the city, which is why it was called Dhobi Ghat, which is where sare kapde aate hain from all over the place and are returned, clean. So that really was the city, to kind of explore the film, to explore this quality of the city, which allows people from everywhere to intersect, to actually affect each other, and also to probe, whether there is the possibility of love between classes, which you see so much in Hindi films, and you're constantly seeing how, of course, rich guy or rich girl, poor boy, no problem. One song will solve it. But, so a little bit to explore that as well.
So,
Sorry, she wants
questions? Okay. So, would you like to open the
Sure,
space for questions?
we'd
Do
be
you
happy
have
to take
questions?
questions.
Yes?
Would you like a mic? I mean, or is there...
Yes.
Perfect.
And could you...
Yes.
Should they introduce themselves? Sorry? Should they introduce themselves?
I'll do that.
Yes.
This boy standing here. Where
Yeah, this boy. While the mic gets to you, I want to hear his question. Say.
Yes. Give it to the little boy there.
Yeah, say loudly.
Say it loud.
Yeah. So cute. Yeah, wait, a mic will come to you. Sorry, he's very, very small, and therefore we will give him the... Yes. Yeah.
Congratulations for the Laapataa Ladies. Kiran.
Thank you.
I love you.
Oh.
I want to dedicate a song to you.
You written a song for me?
Yes.
Please sing it.
ओ सजनी रे कैसे कटे दिन रात कैसे हो तुझसे बात तेरी याद सता रे.
Woo! Big round of applause. Thank you.
All the best for your next movie.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What's your
Hyderabad
name?
loves you.
What's your name?
My name is Daksh.
Daksh. Wow.
Yes.
Thank you, Daksh. Really appreciate it. Thank you, my love.
I love you.
I love you too. Yes. Sorry, you wanted the mic?
I have the mic.
Hi.
Hi, huge
Sorry.
fan.
Thank
so,
you.
so happy to see you in person. Lovely film. Laapataa Ladies goes down into my all-time favorites list. I have two questions. One is quick. You took so long to make your second film. When are you making your next one? And the second question I have is, as a director and a producer, I'm sure you have gotten a lot of scripts that come your way. And then what is your process of selecting scripts, and how much the messaging, the portrayal of women, or the portrayal of other marginalized communities is a factor for you when you select any scripts to make?
Great questions both. So first question, I'm really working on my next script. As you know, the long gap was because I was developing my own stories. So I have quite a few now that are on the verge of being made. So I'm hoping that we go all the way in the Oscars. But as soon as at whatever stage we know one way or the other, I will jump back into making my next film. I have a comedy, I have a dark kind of drama, I have a supernatural horror, all these kinds of stories that I want to make. In terms of what kind of process we have in choosing, like I said, these few films are films that I wrote myself, but I'm very open to getting scripts from other people. We get sent a lot of stories, but you're absolutely right. I've realized quite late in my life that I'm only really interested in stories that have interesting women characters, or women are the leads of the film. I'm actually genuinely not so interested in other kinds of films. There are enough people making those. So yes, intersectionality, people from, sort of more marginalized backgrounds, and women interest me a lot. It doesn't mean I won't do a, whatever, love story or something like that. But interesting women characters are an important thing for me. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am, go on.
Yes.
Can I just like one small?
We already have a question.
Yes. Yes. Give him the mic, huh? I'm feeling
Please
bad.
turn
I
her
took away
mic
your
on.
question.
जब
No,
तक वो mic
we already have a
Yeah,
person.
say, go for it.
मैं बहुत ही ऐसा स्टूपिड सा क्वेश्चन हो सकता है लेकिन धोबी घाट में एक्चुअल सिटी मुंबई वगैरह दिखाना और नाम में धोबी घाट रखना
जी
और फिर अभी लापता लेडीज निर्मलपुर इमेजिनरी जगह
जी
एंड अंबेडकर की सिर्फ इमेज पीछे
जी
तो वो ये जो कॉन्शियस है या फिर ये आप जानबूझ के कर रहे हो कि नाम नहीं बता रही मैं बट मैं सच बता रही हूँ मतलब ये ऐसा है
ये
कि-
निर्मल प्रदेश में जानबूझ के किया था क्योंकि पहले तो जब बिप्लब ने लिखी थी तो एक बिहार के उसमें उन्होंने सेट किया था रफली लेकिन हमें लगा कि एक्चुअली जब हम एक बड़ी बात करने जा रहे हैं तो कोई एक जगह की का जिक्र करके अगर आप करें तो वो बहुत स्पेसिफिक हो जाता है आप बोलने लगते कि हमारे यहाँ ये होता है ये तो नहीं होता ये ऐसे कैसे कर रहे हैं और उसमें जाना नहीं था हमें मोटी बात करनी थी एक्चुअली और पते की बात वो नहीं थी कि कहाँ से है कहानी और वैसे घूंघट बहुत सारी जगह पहनी जाती है तो ये आइडिया हमें आया कि अपना ही प्रदेश क्यों ना बना लें जहाँ हमारे ही रूल्स चलें और इसीलिए निर्मल प्रदेश बनाया हमने थैंक्स
Yes, ma'am. With your next question.
Hello, good evening. I'm Parvati Sastri. For me, in the movie of Laapataa Ladies, the defining moment was
yes
like when Fool got her first earning and then took the money in her hand. Because I feel for a girl, apart from the father who is hand holding her and a partner who supports her choices, the other man every girl needs is Mohandas Karansi Chand Gandhi. I mean the money.
Most important, ma'am. Most important. Women need to be paid for their labor. Women need to earn money.
And
They
also,
need to be economically independent. Full
Yes.
stop.
And then I'm an ex-banker. That's why I request you. Financial independence is very important for anyone to stand on their feet. In all your future movies, also kindly make it an underlying theme and keep continuing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try my best.
Our next question.
Ma'am,
One second. This chap, na, he's been bichara standing up and wanting to ask. I took Daksh's question. So just give him the mic, na. I'll feel very bad about this.
Thank you so much for singling me out. I've been meaning to ask you this question since the day I watched the movie. So very coincidentally, it was regarding that exact same scene which the lady before me had asked. I wanted to pick your brain regarding the screenplay process behind that scene because I feel like empowerment comes in very one-dimensional ways these days. But the fact that it was not her receiving the money, more so it was about the fact that she knew that she could receive money for it. So what was the thought process behind the screenplay? Because everything about that was probably in my top 3 screenplays of all time. So I really want to know the thought process behind that. Thank you.
So in more detail, actually, Sneha will break it down for you because these were all issues that we wanted to bring in, but the light touch with which she did it and the way she closed all those loops, you know, the idea of that khoicha being, you know, this can look after your fate, your husband's health, etc. And in the same place she ties money that she's earned. It was very symbolic for us because she began to value herself. She is the big gift actually for him rather than that muthi bar chawal or whatever, you know. So to value a woman's labor, I think we've all in our lives had women who have done so much for us without ever having had economic, financial independence. And I think that value given to our mothers, women who work in our house, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, brothers, whoever else, you know, does that and their work is not valued. I think that was something we really wanted to touch upon. Through many ways. I mean, Manju Mai says it as well in many dialogues. So I think that was one of the critical things we wanted to do. And the fact that Pool begins to, like you said, it's not just the money, but it's thinking that, okay, there is value to what I can do in my life and who I am. That's valuable. I think that was what we were going for.
Yes, go ahead. That person. She's already got the mic.
good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Sorry, someone
Ma'am,
has
I-
a mic there, ma'am.
I really enjoyed watching your movie and I felt this is
our movie. So it felt so connected. But whenever I watch other movies which are directed by men, I feel it is not my movie. Because the portrayal, the experiences of women were not really captured into that. And especially the part of item songs or the indecent representation, that is not being talked about in the mainstream media. So how do you think especially women fraternity in the movie industry, they can collaborate and fight for removing such movies, even against CBFC or SBFCs?
Yes. So I do think that we need a lot more women writers, queer writers, writers from marginalized backgrounds. People from all across the spectrum need to be part of storytelling through writing, putting their own experiences into the film. So writing, directing. Of course, I feel we need more women in every aspect of filmmaking. So, and that's a conscious decision. Even for me as a producer, I'm going to have at least 50% women in my film. I mean, that's something that I will work towards personally, because it has to start with each of us. But, I think I don't think only women can do it. I think there are very, very sensitive male directors as well. And if you look at some excellent films on women's experience, for instance, I think The Great Indian Kitchen, the Malayalam film, it's, I think, directed by a man, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know who the director is, but if I'm not mistaken, it's not I don't think you need to be a woman to understand, only a woman to understand a woman's experience. And I think we have great collaborators in men, because many of them are very sensitive to our problems. And we have to, I feel we need also to be in some way representing men's problems also a little more sensitively. We tend to think that they have it good, but one of the reasons I think there is so much trouble in the world is that nobody really quite understands men also. So I do think that there's space for us to work across this gender divide, make it a slightly more empathetic, kind world for each other. It's not just, we want all the rights for ourselves. It doesn't work like that. And I realize that also in a much more sort of sharp way, because I'm raising a boy. I have a son, and it's really one of the key things I'm doing in life is to bring up another human being, and what he is going to be like. Forget what he does. I mean, that's not, but the human that he is speaks about who I am, right? Because I'm his single mom. So raising empathetic boys, and being sensitive to each other, I think will give us better storytelling. At the same time, I think it's fine to have all kinds of commercial fun films, but, be good to do that.
Yeah, can I go ahead? Yes. Thank you for Laapataa Ladies. I am Pavan. My question is, ma'am, the movie is certainly so fresh and it also mirrors the society, but at the same time, it's not completely real as well. You assumed certain, let's say, innocence in the rural part. It is so clear, the bride, the face in the photo is not visible, but still the hero, he go to police station and he shows the photo. So, are you very conscious of this part of not being completely real because you want to add certain quick and humor? I want to listen
Yes,
to that.
it is satire, and in satire, that's what you do. You exaggerate, you highlight things that you want to highlight. So if it was realistic, it may not have been as effective, The idea is to make you laugh, is to highlight some of the absurdities that we live with. And we take for granted. We go along every day thinking, okay, this is it, but this is normal. So and all of you, I'm sure, follow, stand-up comedians. That's what they do best. It's exaggeration of actually things that we've normalized, so it's a device, it's a tool, certainly. Yes.
Ma'am?
Yes, after you. Oh, she's been standing for so long. Why don't you sit? We'll give you a chance.
Once again, congratulations, Oscar nominated a lot of
Sir, we are not
Ladies
yet
films.
nominated. I wish. With your blessings, sir.
Actually, I'm big fan of your films. Tare Zameen, Laapataa Ladies.
Question, please.
Actually, Laapataa Ladies screenplay, I'm very mind-blowing, ma'am. Just 4 characters running. Just only 4 characters. I'm big fan of your films. Thank you. Actually, I'm story writer. Presently, free production in Telugu film. Actually, presently, I'm writing a story, reality show. That story particularly designed in American.
What is your question, please? Because we are running out of time.
One second, ma'am. Actually, that story name, The Slumdog Millionaires.
Okay.
Real show, good awareness story, social message, good entertainment, lot of.
Sir, please
good
write
concept.
to hello@kindling.co.in. I don't take a pitch as a question.
Ma'am, my question is, I'm working next project your film.
Are you working?
Yes,
Please
That's
write.
a question or assertion?
Ma'am.
Sir.
I'm working your next project.
Okay, sir.
Just the last question from this lady
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Hi, ma'am. I'm from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and there are a bunch of us here. They are the reason why I got the mic, so thank you to all of them. So my question is, you were talking about how the choice of wearing a gungat for fool was retained at the end of the movie. But I want to ask you, in a setup where there is so much internalization of patriarchy, can fool's choice of continuing to wear a gungat can it be considered truly her choice? Because can it
Well,
be considered
actually, honestly, when you see the film, the last bit of Pool, and I don't know if you guys caught this, it's a little Easter egg. Pool and Deepak walk away, her ghungat falls off her head, she's going to lift it up, and then she decides against it. Right? I think at that point, she wants to try to exercise this sort of choice. If she had still worn it, I don't think I would have thought any less of her, because honestly, sometimes what is, like you said, it's sort of a deeply ingrained, unconscious sort of behavior that you do because you think that that's what's expected, but it's also becomes something that is very comfortable for people. So it's very difficult to judge at what point it's a conscious choice or not. But in the film specifically, she kind of chooses to let her gungat go. We left it as a very, very tiny little moment at the end. If you miss it, it doesn't change anything. For me, it doesn't change anything if she continues to wear her gungat. Poonam continues to wear her gungat, you know. So I do think that it'll take time for perspectives to change, for people to realize that, look, actually, just a very small change in perspective can make me happier, can make me get more space for myself within a very sort of conservative or rigid, structured family, setup. So it takes a little bit of time to change perspective, to realize that, okay, maybe this is not what I want. And that little, we wanted to do that, to start opening little windows and doors to let in some air, and maybe then people will wander out of that door, they'll peep out initially. And then at some point, they'll take those tentative steps out and take that chance. What actually one of the things that is, much more difficult to do is what Jaya did, which is you don't have anything, go by your wits, you're cutting ties with everyone and starting afresh. How many of us can do that? None of us. I mean, not none, but like it's very, very hard. So that's not something that we want to necessarily endorse and say this is the only way to do it. But within your patriarchal setup, you can slowly question it, you can slowly make inroads and change it. You can do it much more boldly. So the idea is, at least let's start making, these steps and conversations. Like Vidyapachi said in this, when this gentleman came out with a very, very, very conventional looking women with gungats on their heads, and he said, "Man fresh ho gaya film dekh ke." hopefully when the women go home, they'll be like, you know, maybe man really mera bhi fresh ho gaya, abhi nahi pehante hain. You know, you don't know. So I feel like it's a conversation. We must work towards it. This smashing, I love the idea of it. I fully, you know, I'm in full solidarity with smashing the patriarchy. But I don't think, you know, I think there is give and take, and we can get in there and nicely take also. We must nicely take
Thank
also.
you. Thank you, Kiran. Thank you.